couch.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to what is technically the very first Austin Blockchain Collective Community Meetup. I know you've been to these meetups, some of you maybe for the last 2 years, but actually we called it something different until today. It was the Austin Blockchain for Business Meetup. But given the Austin Blockchain Collective has happened, I kind of thought it was too confusing to have different things, so I renamed this one to Austin Blockchain Collective. It's not going to change an awful lot in terms of what we do and cover, but it does have new branding. So thank you for coming. I'm going to do, my name's Pete Harris. I am the Executive Director of the Austin Blockchain Collective, and somewhere in the room, he's just gone, where is he, is Joshua, but he has gone. And he works with me on the collective, but he will be back up here in a minute presenting. Well, a great meet-up tonight with a couple of presentations. We're going to, in future, try and do kind of normal format. Will be a couple of short presentations and one feature presentation, and we'll see how we get on doing that. Yeah, let me just go straight into the presentation. This is kind of a few minutes from me, just intro, and then I'll open up to the floor for shout outs and things, and then we'll jump into the first presentation. So let's go. In case any of you do not know about the Austin Blockchain Collective, who does not know about the Austin Blockchain Collective and what it's about? A couple of you, all right, so the rest of you are going to be bored. Don't appear. It is an organisation. It got going at South by Southwest, and its mission is to advocate for and showcase the great blockchain and crypto innovation happening here in Austin. And the big picture mission of it is to put Austin on the global blockchain map. And if you think that's a really tall order, well, it is. But we're helped by the fact that there are at least 100 blockchain-related companies with a presence here in Austin, so we've got a chance. So we're going to be doing some things. We've done a few things already. We're going to be doing a few more to help that mission along. I will go through a few of those in a couple of slides, but suffice to say, we cannot quite do things that we're doing, or at least as fast as we're doing, without some patrons. Patrons being people who give us support and guidance, and do indeed give us some currency, sometimes cryptocurrency. We've got a couple right now, hoping to have a couple more fairly soon. OneChain is one which has been here with us since the very beginning. And they've got a few things coming up in Austin over the next few weeks, which we'll be helping to promote. The other company which is helping us as a patron is one I can't mention. This makes the marketing a little bit difficult. The person's handsome mugshot there, that's Dustin Byington. He used to be president of OneChain, and then he left to do a stealth startup, which I can tell you is related to OneChain. I can't tell you what the name is or will be, because it's probably changing. But hopefully by the time the next meetup comes, he will have named it officially, and I can actually put the name up in a logo and not Dustin's face. So it's a lovely face that it is. So, and I expect to have a couple more patrons as well. As well as patrons, we have supporters. Supporters work with us in a couple of ways. Sometimes they actually do provide financial support, like Cognitive Scale, which is a local AI company beginning to get into blockchain. And sometimes they provide support in kind. Capital Factory provides a lot of support in kind by allowing us to use their facilities for nothing. And they also provide us with connections within their environment and their ecosphere, which is great. And companies like Kilroy Blockchain and PouchPoints and Mazin PR, which is run by a delightful lady who happens to be my wife, are all people who tangibly do things that help the collective. So if you're a company that either has some money you want to provide us or has some things you can really do to help us, we would love to know about you, and your logo could be up here on one of these slides and on other things. So, moving on, the agenda for tonight is pretty much like the agenda for anybody. We're going to start with some notices and updates for what we're doing, some shout outs from you guys from the floor. There'll be a short presentation by Joshua from Pouch Points. There'll then be a feature presentation by Jacob from Dun & Bradstreet. And then there'll be some mingling and chatting and stuff, and at some point people will go home or go downstairs to the bar and do more chatting and stuff. So that's it for the agenda. What notices and updates do we have? These are a few. We've got quite a few things happening. Anyone who was here, did anyone come to the town hall on Thursday? A few of you, great. So something was announced on Thursday, which was the Mayor's Blockchain Challenge. And the Mayor's Blockchain Challenge is essentially a hackathon which is running at the end of this month. And it is a hackathon whose focus is on, if you like, providing digital identity for the city's homeless population. The city has been involved in a project for a few months now. They got an initial grant from the charitable arm of Bloomberg to do innovative things, and so they decided that this area of homeless IDs was something they wanted to tackle. They've done some validation in that area. They're working with one startup which has got very much an MVP product, and working with Dell Medical School as well. And they're really looking at kind of what comes next. In August, they've got to go and see Bloomberg again, and they are in the running to get a lot more money. They might not get that money. They're perfectly realists in that. They're up against about 30 other cities. But they've said even if they don't get the funding from Bloomberg, this project has become so important to the mayor, the City of Austin Innovation Department, etc. They are going to push it forward, and so they're looking at the community to help them in that. So that's coming up. If you come, there's a slide later. If you go to the Austin Blockchain Collective website, you will find out more about this and see links. I'll come on to that slide in a second. There is coming up later this week a working group, which is our kick-off blockchain AI working group meeting. It's actually one specifically looking at the authentication and the authenticity of data as it relates to feeding into AI models. So it's just kind of an interesting area that I'm interested in. And a lady called Karen Kilroy is running that group, and so that's a little meetup happening on Thursday. Very informal, about half a dozen, 10 people going to get together. If you want to go to it, we've got information on that on the website as well. South by Southwest, as they did this year, next year they're going to do a lot in blockchain. They're going to have a blockchain and crypto track. They are looking for content for it. The way they do that is this thing called a panel picker. So you submit your kind of idea to them, and then they kind of curate them a little bit and then put them up to public vote. The deadline for people getting their submissions in to be considered is this Friday. So if you're doing something and got something to say about blockchain, you definitely want to try and get on that opportunity. Final kind of notes for this time is October is going to be something called Austin Blockchain Month. We realised a few things were happening in October. there's already this thing called Austin Startup Week that Capital Factory run, and they wanted to run a blockchain track this year. So they are doing that. They will actually run all the sessions on October 1st, the Monday, and we are helping them with that endeavour. There's a conference coming up on October 9th, which is focused on fundraising and ICOs that Ten Capital are hosting. And then at the end of the month, there's the 4th running of the Texas Bitcoin conference. And so we're going to be involved with all of those to some extent, maybe simply promoting them with the Startup Day. We'll be curating that a lot. We'll probably have some discount codes to provide people for those of you who want to come along. So there's a lot happening, but we are going to add in at least a couple, maybe 3 or 4 extra events in October to kind of bulk it up and make it into a very serious blockchain month. Might do another town hall or something like that. Got a couple of organisations and companies saying they want to be part of it, so hopefully be able to tell you more on that next month. So a few things are happening that are keeping us busy. As I've said, we've got a website, and that is the website, austinblockchaincollective.com, and that is the place you go from which there's information on it, but there's links on it to other places where you get in for more information. And on the website, as kind of the second page, you can easily get to our Twitter account. You can follow that, find out what's happening. You can add a hashtag to your tweets to get them amplified. You can send us news, and we will post the news on our blog every Monday in a community blog post. There is a blog. Just gave that away on Medium. Again, you can get to that from this website. There's a community group on LinkedIn. You can get to that. You can post things in there. And there's this meetup group, and probably about 10 or 11 other active meetup groups as well, happening in Austin. We are not in any way trying to get in the way of the other meetup groups. We are very, very happy to support and promote what all the other meetup groups are doing. And to that end, shout outs from the audience. Is there anyone from other meetups that wants to get up and say, we've got a meetup, and come to it? I'm sure there are. Is yours really a meetup? It's really a strange thing, isn't it? It's a technical something group, isn't it? But you can say something, that's fine. We're friends here.
Okay, it's for, I call it technology fanboys. Okay, we talk about the market opportunities, the business opportunities for different technologies, and we go to a different technology each month. Oh, okay. And we are adding a new type of program about every other month or so. We're having the VC or capital, a head of a fund who is concentrating in a certain area to get up and to come and talk to us about what their fund's about, what they think are the opportunities in their area. The one we're doing on the 27th, which is Friday, it's a breakfast. It's at 7 in the morning. It's a hot breakfast. It's at Cal Vista down on 360. It'll be Dr. Sarah Brand of True Wealth, and her focus is on women-led companies, startups, and particularly in the health area and sustainability area. Right. I have cards to help you remember.
Super, thanks, Bill. Any other meetups going on? Kevin, are you doing your drink up again soon? When's that?
Wednesday.
When?
Wednesday.
This Wednesday?
Yes.
All right, okay. And that's at Shady Grove?
Shady Grove, 6 to 10. Come hang out under the con trees, drink some beer, eat some burgers.
And that's all about kind of investing, not just in crypto, but other things, but including crypto.
Right.
And trading.
It includes crypto, options, equities, ETFs, any kind of investing. We're just a group of seasoned traders that get together and talk shop.
Great, super. Any other meetups this week or coming up?
Yeah, I'm from IEEE Consultant Network. We have a monthly meeting on Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday,
Yeah.
in Pokejo Restaurant,
The IEEE.
Market Hill in North West Palmer Lane.
All right.
So this week, I think say 25th, July 25th, we talk about AI topics.
Okay.
So you're
We should-
IEEE Consultants Network.
All right,
You're
we
interested,
should try and
search
head
that
up.
work
I
and
want to
find
know
us.
more about IEEE and what they're doing here, so, great. Frank,
Don't forget the Bitcoin meetup every Tuesday.
I haven't forgotten Bitcoin, but no one else is here to talk about it. Are you going to talk about the Bitcoin
I'm just
meetup?
mentioning it, make sure it gets out there.
Fine, where is it this week? Central Market.
Central Market.
Central Market this week.
You mentioned on Thursday at
Okay.
Irene's.
And it's not just Bitcoin, they talk about other tokenized currencies and.
Which central market?
mining.
Central Market Lamar, about 40th. I've mentioned your,
Did you say it's at Irene's, so they don't come here?
yeah, I haven't yet, but I said it's on the website, so don't worry. So, do you want to talk about it? No, you should come
Sure.
up and talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
This is Karen Kilroy, who runs the Blockchain AI Working Group and is running the meetup on Thursday. Talk about it.
Thanks, Pete. The meetup that we're having Thursday is the kickoff of an idea that some of you may have heard me talking about, which is data authenticity for artificial intelligence, and using blockchain to prove where data comes from and who delivered it and when and what their credentials were to lock it down forever. The reason that I was raising this question is because everything in artificial intelligence is based on data, right? Data. And as computer professionals, we all know the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So like imagine you're a farmer in Nepal and you're deciding whether to plant your crops in May or in April, and you're basing it on this artificial intelligence system. How do you know that it's not, that some bad actor hasn't introduced data or introduced bad data or hacked it? And so that's kind of the questions that we're raising. And I asked this question to some really high-level people at an AI conference, and I thought I'd get the answer, oh, well, you just solve it by doing this. And they didn't. They said, yeah, you're right, that's a problem, and you know what else is a problem is the algorithms. That there's no way to prove who introduced an algorithm and when and what it was based on. And so, so that's why we decided to start this meetup. That's just kind of like an open community talk to talk about what should be the standards for the future for AI. When data is introduced to artificial intelligence, should there be a blockchain process? You know, what would it be like? So we're just going to raise those questions, and Pete's going to speak at the first one.
Ready for a couple of minutes.
Yes. It's going to be mostly discussion about what's the philosophy of the group and what are the goals. So if you want to be on the ground floor or something like that, come out to Irene's on, it's a restaurant on West Avenue. And if it's hot like this, we'll be inside. If it's not, we'll be outside. And it should be a fun time. Thanks.
Good. So I think that's all the minutes. Does anyone else have any shout out by which they want to go up and say what you're doing or what you need help with or what you can help with, or if you're hiring? And the only thing I'll say is, yeah, sure, you can mention ICAs, but don't do a pitch on them, or because we'll be shut down by the Texas State Securities Board. But anyone got a shout out? You got a shout out?
Who, me? Well, she has a,
Oh.
Nikki has a question.
I have another meetup. It's so new that I have to figure out how to say it. But we have a meetup group called Sound of Austin, Texas. It's Austin Art and Sound. And it will be an art project that combines 5G, blockchain,
Oh.
a bunch of algorithms, a bunch of
Okay.
IBM Watson, because we will fight to figure out what the Sound of Austin will be of the day. And we have a public vote, and then we have Watson, and the one that's for the day selected will come out of people's devices that have the app
Okay.
at sunset. So it's an art project that enhances the spirit of Austin. Austin and it sounds,
Yeah.
and whoever wants to come and help.
And when and where
Okay, when and where? We do have our website is soundofatx.com.
Yeah.
Our meetup is Austin Art and Sound.
Okay.
And we have right now we have it every third Wednesday, every third Monday.
All right.
As a 2-minute meeting called I Found You, because that's when we gather the new people, just to introduce. But there will be other ones coming that are maybe on a weekly basis, because we need to get it started, and we would love to actually integrate everybody open source on all levels. So connecting the
Just
with everything. And
send me the information on that. I will tweet it out and do
yes,
things
sir.
like that.
I will do so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Anyone put any more? Oh, I guess you all had eyes here. Okay. That's good. In that case, I have done with my bit. I am going to stop my bit and hand over to Joshua. Joshua.
Yes,
You're
sir.
going to come and speak about PouchPoint.
I'll do my best. Thank you, everybody, for your
That's
patience.
about. So you need to plug in your strange
Thanks for
laptop.
listening to Pete. I need to plug in my screen on my laptop.
Or your strange laptop.
I dare to be different. That's why I have a PC. I think my computer turned off. Does anybody know how these work?
It's a fake idea.
Why do you still have the microphone?
Because you're busy typing your button. You've got face recognition on Mac.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was perfect. That was funny. It took me a second. But
It should be.
really funny.
Well, no, it likes to hijack it that way. This isn't actually my laptop. It's one I was alone. I kind of did, but I don't know if they're going to ask for it back. We'll see. Yeah, it feels like it. No. I don't want to roll the windows down and roll them back up.
All right.
Hey, thanks, Pete. Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming in tonight. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And again, thanks for everybody coming in. I do want to do a quick shout out for this particular meeting next month. We're going to have McGinnis and Lockridge come in and talk about tax law and crypto and security. So Pete, I think you're going to be gone next month. And then I'll be working to host this. I'm not quite sure I know what I'm doing in that regard, but I'll do my best. But we'll have a couple of attorneys in here talking through some things about tax law and crypto and security. So it'll be probably a little boring, but it'll be informative. We'll see how it goes. So that's my shout out for next month. So PouchPoints. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PouchPoints. I'm not the technical brain behind everything that we've built. My CTO is not in this evening, but if you have any questions for me or questions for us, I'll do my best to try to answer them, or we'll put them off and answer them at a later time. PouchPoints, by virtue of the way we're building the company, we're a servant leadership-based organization. So first and foremost, we are wanting to improve the lives and improve the businesses of small to medium-sized companies in the world today. We are focused on valuing them, focused on experiencing their culture and what they do and how they run their business, and ultimately using that feedback and that information that we have to grow what we're doing as a business and grow how we're building things. Our overall goal is for businesses to be able to enable their customers to invite friends so that they can reward those best customers for helping them find their next best customer. So for tonight, I won't take the entire 30 minutes on the presentation. I don't think I need to slide you to death. I want to talk a little bit about the problem statement that we uncovered from a product market fit standpoint when we put the business together. Then I want to do a demonstration of an advocate introducing PouchPoints to a business. And that's really my call to action for you all tonight. If you know businesses that work well with word of mouth advertising, and they're looking for a solution to better reward advocates, to know who they are, to know how they found the last customer that they got, we have a platform to be able to enable them to do that. In addition to that, the points that we issue on our system are eligible to be redeemed using digital currencies, and we're able to do this without requiring the participants to open a digital wallet as a part of receiving their incentive. How many in here by a show of hands are familiar with setting up your own digital wallet? Quite a few of you. So one of the things we uncovered when we were doing the product market fit is that businesses have a pain point around advertising, especially small to medium-sized businesses. They don't necessarily get value out of advertising through places like Yelp or Google, etc. They can put money into it and then they get really no value out of it or little value. And then more importantly, what we uncovered is that their existing customers and the next customer get no value out of the system. The second pain point that we uncovered as we started talking to these businesses is that they don't want to be left behind. They understand that there's a revolution coming. I think we all believe that, which is why we've committed so much of our time and our lives to this. So they see an opportunity to get involved in digital currency, but they're not necessarily interested in putting their entire payment system at risk in order to address that. In addition to that, as we've talked to advocates, people who really love the businesses that they are already referring, and the customers who are participating in those referral exchanges, they're also interested in participating in digital currency and in the digital currency economy, but they don't know how to. And telling people to take their own money and go open a wallet and buy Bitcoin and then go buy a product with Bitcoin is not necessarily the best experience for most people. In all the research that we did, about 20% of the folks that we talked to identified cryptocurrency as an investment. The rest of them just looked at it as something maybe they could get involved in, something that they would like to have. So with those kind of numbers, you can see that most people aren't going to take their cash and put it into Bitcoin and then go and try to flip it around buying ADA or guess the next currency that Coinbase is going to announce they're looking at. So we identified that this opportunity for advertising instead of payments was really opportunistic for us to go look into and to do more with. It's 2 to 8% of the company's, any individual's business's top line revenue. And what we're able to develop, and this is what our minimum viable product is focused on, is an accurate, frictionless, registered referral flow that allows these businesses to incentivize their best customers for helping them find the next customers. Do they have to have a full digital wallet to be able to do this? No, because we can get them started using these reward points without requiring them to open a digital wallet. Once they get the reward points, they can convert those to currency. Guess what? Now they have a reason to open or have a digital wallet, have some kind of wallet. Prior to that, they didn't have any reason. So for those of you in here that are proponents of blockchain and proponents of cryptocurrency, we'd really love to see you get on the bandwagon for what we're doing, because we're putting an opportunity in front of businesses to use this model to reward their customers, and then their customers to have an incentive without putting their own money at risk to go get a digital wallet. Any questions about what I have up here?
You're a drug dealer, gateway drug. Cryptocurrency.
To cryptocurrency, that's a good framing, Corey. I mean, as a wallet vendor, you understand some of the struggles around, getting people to participate and getting, and doing more with this. But in a sense, we are. I'll say that as a part of what we're doing, we refer to it as easy as ABC. So this is a little bit more of the business and kind of technical speak. I don't normally lead with this as the primary marketing. So if you go to pouchpoints.com, you'll see that we're targeting a couple of key personas. One is the businesses that need a referral platform, and we're a $0 onboarding fee to be able to do this. So there's no cost to the business to be able to participate in this. They only pay when they issue transactions to the advocates on the network. The second persona is on the advocate side, so we want them to be participating in the system, and I'll show you a little bit about how you could invite businesses and people that you know to our system. The third thing that we're building, which is something that comes after the MVP, is a marketplace. So initially, people don't have to convert to digital currency. They can also exchange the points for the other businesses that are participating in the marketplace. It's an option for them, so we're not forcing them to any particular currency like Bitcoin. So just by way of example, you have Frank Robles sitting in the back of the room who's with Digital Town, and they have Austin City tokens. And we're talking to him about allowing our reward points to be exchangeable for those city tokens and potentially at a premium. So we'll have a marketplace built out of businesses that are issuing reward points that have a digital currency option as well as exchange for the business's products and services. But we can introduce other currencies to this marketplace and give people a bonus for participating in those currencies if they'd like to do that. Question in the back?
Maybe I missed it. So what's the revenue model?
That's a great question. Why don't we get together afterwards? If you're an investor, we can talk more about what we're doing from a revenue standpoint. Get into the details on that. I think that's a great question. Did everybody hear the question? You wanted to know how we were making money. So 2 things I can say, as I mentioned before, it's a transaction fee model, and then we look at the overall GMV, or the gross merchandise value of the economies that we're looking at penetrating. But again, we can talk a little bit more about the revenue model from an investment standpoint. Question in the back? No, just stretching? Okay, great. So let me jump over and do a demonstration. While I'm doing that, if you want to, you can scan this QR code, and this will give you access to our website where you can invite businesses or people that you know that have businesses that would be able to participate in Pouch Points. Sorry, I'm gonna, 1 second. What's that? You can take a picture of that. Yeah, you can take a picture of it or scan it right now. If your camera pops up, it'll probably try to go to the website. But now it's gonna disappear, so I can do the demo. So our goal with what we developed is that you don't need a mobile app to participate in this economy that we're building Pouch Points on. Does anyone know how many people in the Austin area don't have smartphones? Anybody have that statistic? 15%. Most of the homeless. Yeah, 15% is the number that we work with. The other number that we work with is underbanked. Those who have predatory debit cards or predatory banking options, that's about 40% of the local economy. So part of the reason why we've developed this as a web app and not as a mobile app for a smartphone is because by doing something like that, we basically uninclude anywhere between 15 and 40% of an economy. And so by building a web app, it's a very simple way for people who are already doing referrals to transact something they're doing offline. They just simply put in their email address, put in the owner's email address, add a little bit of a note like, hey, I learned about Pouch Points. I think this would be a great reward program for you. We're community-based, so most referral programs fail because the businesses don't do enough referrals to show advocates that other people are getting rewards. So our model is designed to be more open so that the advocates' rewards and the status that they're obtaining is shared across multiple businesses. And again, this is on the reward side for referrals. We're not even talking about customer engagement. So for the person that was asking about investment, we can talk a little bit more about the expanded business model. We're really focused on a minimum viable product in Beachhead, which is this referral space, this advertising opportunity. From here, we just click the send invite button, and then when we click send invite, it sends the invitation off to the business owner, and it sends a notice back to the person who registered or back to the advocate so that they can get their account set up, and then they can track the referrals within our system. Any questions so far? Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, email seems fairly antiquated, and especially for somebody that's a millennial. What are you doing to integrate into say mobile numbers? In a lot of cases, especially younger population isn't going to be a frequent email user, but is much more apt to use a mobile messaging, text messaging.
Yeah, I like the question. So I think the question is, I think I explained why we specifically are staying away from the smartphone mobile apps at this point. But why do we not have something that's text messaging based as a part of our minimum viable product or our launch product? It was just a decision that we needed to make early on when we were putting the MVP together. One of our customers that we've launched with is called SquareCap. And the scenario that they're in is that they have students, and I'll just show you real quick and let's put the mic down, I think I can talk loud enough. they have students in their environment that are working with professors. And so as a part of what we put together with them, it's not as easy as I thought, because I can't read that.
Go down. Two square cap.
Well, my CTO made it case sensitive. Yeah, sorry about that. There we go. So in this scenario, when it comes up, it has their logo, and then down here, it has the invitation information. I'll stay away from that. But in this situation, what we're dealing with is the students are inviting the professors to work with SquareCap. And so for the MVP and for our launch customers, it made sense to focus on email on day one. But as a part of our roadmap, we're targeting integration with text messaging going forward, because that also serves the digitally underserved fairly well, because they have access to text-based phones as opposed to smartphones. So great question, thank you for asking. Corey, did you have a question?
He covered it.
He covered it on the text messaging side?
What about social networks, just out of curiosity? As a way to...
Yeah, great question. On the networking side, only on the roadmap, we want to do it. In fact, that's part of the reason why, as a CEO, I wanted to hijack the invitation language, because we have a view that says people should be able to invite other people to work with businesses, or invite businesses to work with people. You shouldn't be forced to invite people to work with a page. That's not really social. It's kind of, you know, somebody else's cryptocurrency. They just call it a page, and then they sell the concept of an ad on the backside of it. But we're getting down that path. In fact, I think Nextdoor is a particularly good opportunity for us doing some partnerships. Let me take a question from Corey real quick.
Where's your data for this stuff being stored?
That's a great question. I don't have my CTO here right now, so I can't really get into the nuances of the technology. I can say that for the MVP that we built, we looked explicitly at storing data in blockchain, like in Hyperledger. And for the MVP, it didn't make sense to do that, because there's still some clarity around what we need to keep in a blockchain environment. There's a view that says the rewards between businesses need to be serialized. So in all the research that we did, we could have done a token, but if you think about market activation with a token, we're talking about businesses who are sort of, you know, a little shy on digital currency, and then advocates. We've already talked about the digital wallet problem, and then you've got marketplace. So bringing out a new token, which there's probably, I don't know, 10 or so that are out there trying to crack the nut on loyalty and so on and so forth, it just didn't make any sense. Plus, we really wanted to be the 1600th token to release, and we weren't able to get that number. So. Okay, that was my joke. Sorry about that. That was a bad joke. But yeah, there's what is it, like 1,620 tokens out there right now. I don't think we didn't need another one right now. So I like the joke. You did? Yes. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate that. Yes, ma'am?
So if you know 15% of the folks in Austin don't have a smartphone, how many of them don't have email?
You know, that's a great question. I don't have a good answer to that question around email, whether or not they do or don't have access to it. What we do know is that the people who are digitally underserved at that point are also able to access services at the public libraries. And people who might not have smartphones, they might also have access to computers at libraries in their communities. So there is an expectation that beyond the smartphone that they have access elsewhere.
Do you think they'll participate in this program? You have like some talk to them, I guess?
Well, there's a possibility. I can't go into much more detail on some of the partnerships that we're working on and why that digitally what's that?
It's free stuff, of course.
It's free stuff, right? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, from an onboarding perspective, we've had several advisors encourage us to charge an onboarding fee. But for right now, we're going the $0 amount, and then we're executing transaction fees as a way to handle this. And it's a transaction fee based on the reward, but we can talk more offline about that as well. But to that end, we've also got some partnerships that we're working on that we believe are going to get us a lot more exposure in the area, especially when it comes to the digitally underserved and some of those that are underbanked. So we look forward to more participation, that's for sure. So I'll flip back over to the deck. I think I'll stay out of the presentation side. How much time do I have? Like 5 more minutes?
5 to 10.
Yeah, 5 to 10. So I'll
Where's
just.
Karen at? She's more strict.
What's that?
So where's Karen at? She's more strict.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, Karen's great. No, she does a great job for us. So to that end, I'll leave you with this and the call to action. You're welcome to invite businesses, small to medium-sized businesses that you know. I will say that initially we're not targeting restaurants. They have a lot of amazing options available to them. As a part of what we're doing next, though, we are working on a relationship with another Capital Factory accelerator called Dine with Dash. How many of you have heard Dine with Dash? So we really like what they do. So the discussions we're having with them are that the rewards that we're offering would be convertible or usable within their system. And so they offer us a really good on-ramp to local Austin businesses and also help facilitate goals for Capital Factory. So I'll open it up to some more Q&A or give you all a couple-minute break before Jacob comes up. Yes, sir?
So your solution is really providing a platform for business to have an easy way to have the rewards program, right? So they don't have to build it. Is that kind of part of it?
That's part of it, yes. And the rewards program, the referral rewards are community-based. So the goal there is that typically for small businesses, it's hard for them to have referral rewards because they do it individually, and then the companies that have referral reward programs charge a fee before they even get started. And top line revenue and margins isn't always ideal for them to be able to do that. So that's the reason why we think this makes sense. We do have the view that there's a token opportunity here potentially at some point, but it depends on how well the application structure for us goes. But again, these are unknowns for a lot of people.
And do you fear that, I mean, I don't know if maybe I understood right, that it can cause, you know, there's a difference when you're referring something out of your pure enjoyment versus when you have a financial gain, right? Obviously,
yes.
Getting rewards. Do you see the business model affecting how people perceive referrals?
We've had that come up a couple of times with some of the interviews that we've done on the customer interview side. We couldn't really address that in the MVP, but there is a part of the roadmap where we have a smile.pouchpoints.com that enables your referral rewards to be transacted to your favorite charity. And we think by doing it with digital currency, it takes a lot of the overhead out of it. So in that regard, both the business, the referral person, and the customer, they can all participate. So hopefully you know what I meant by smile.pouchpoints.com. If you're familiar with smile.amazon.com. So thank you, Amazon, for establishing that. We'll just pick it up and move on with it. Corey, did you have a question? I think I had one more question over there. So okay, yes, sir.
Can you give me like a few examples of what types of businesses would be using that?
It's a great question.
I would totally.
You would totally use it?
Because we would be the first art project that gets money through there in the world.
So that's a really great way to look at it. So Heike, you and I should talk. So in her scenario, she's got the art project. This is an opportunity for her to do that. The way we would look at that is we would publicize that as this art project is making impact in the broader space because it's able to introduce digital currency and blockchain and so on and so forth into its business and referral model. So that's a win for you, and that's how we're messaging everything we're doing. It's like with SquareCap, when we message that, we're gonna go out talking about educational software and how it's changing engagement, because they intend to use this for engagement in their software product as well. But going back to your question, which was very specific, which is what type of businesses are we targeting with this? We really believe that small to medium-sized services businesses are ideal for this initially. So if you have a friend that's a physical therapist, or somebody who's a pet groomer, or even a barber, any of those kind of businesses could effectively take advantage of this right away. We didn't think B2C software vendors would be ideal for this initially, but as we expose what we're doing to more folks, we're finding that they do see it as applicable because they typically grow through word of mouth on the B2C side. So we've got a platform called Corgi, and the software development company that built the product, they're also on our platform. It's called DevBot and CGBot. So if you go to our marketplace, you'll see pouchpoints.com/marketplace. You'll see some of the businesses that are launching with us. Yes, sir?
And so you would just be able to send or use your points with the business, and the business would give you points for referring people, and right?
The points would be usable in the marketplace, or you'd be able to convert them to digital currency. You're not limited to just products and services from that company. It's a great question.
Okay.
And then when you introduce us to a company, our model is we're also innovating through generosity. So if you introduce us to a company that comes on board and transacts with us, if they're transacting with us in 5 years, you'll still be getting rewards from their transactions with us. So advocates who introduce us to companies will earn the rewards from that company indefinitely. That's the way we've launched, if that makes sense.
For like user acquisition for the small and medium businesses, you thought about like Angie's List? I mean, you probably have, but I mean, that would be like a perfect partnership, it sounds like, for all those one-off businesses.
There definitely could be, yeah. As long as we're meeting, you know, we're serving the people in the same way. So I had started early on talking a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing, and it very much is a servant leadership approach. So as long as our cultures align, I think there's an opportunity for us to do more. But we have a young lady that has a question back here. I'd love to have her question. Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious, when you founded the company?
When did we found the company?
Yeah, when did you start it?
So there's a bit of a story there. The actual founding date, I think, was last Thursday. If you go to the state of Texas, welcome to startup world, right? Where these things happen at a moment's notice. Thank you very much, Lynn. I appreciate that. We've been working on this for about 4.5 months, and then my CTO and co-founder and I both realized we had a passion for rewards. We were actually introduced by this gentleman in the back row over here who's hiding. His name's Karthik. Go meet him. He's a great guy. And Kevin, too. I'll divert over to Kevin now. He's a great guy. Yeah, you're already on the hot seat. But he introduced us because he realized that Chris Fronda, who's on board with me as a co-founder, was very passionate about rewards and digital currency and about, you know, how they could be used in a community and work, and people could work together with it. And so because of that passion, we both continue to work closely together. So we've been about 2 months putting all of this together and onboarding more customers. So yes, Mike, question?
Thank you.
My question's about transaction of like redeeming your points for cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Are you gonna have your points like pegged to the dollar and then you can retrieve a dollar amount, or do you plan to have some kind of like exchange where points are traded for cryptocurrency?
That's exactly what it's really the latter. So the question was, are we going to require our points to be pegged to a particular digital currency like Bitcoin, for example? Right, or a fiat currency. No, we would not be able to peg them to a fiat currency. There are reasons why we can't do that. But we can show people on our website how much their rewards are convertible for into a particular digital currency. For our MVP, we're doing conversion analog. So we have a little bit of have to have a little bit of a float around the spot price that we get when we do the conversion. As we mature the system and we're able to do it more quickly, then we can get a tighter loop on when the conversion executes. So it's definitely a good question. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Good. I think you can money transfer at that point. What's that? Are you a money transfer at that point? If you're an investor, I'd be happy to put you in touch with our lawyers and they'll tell you why we're not a money transmitter. But I definitely would love to talk to people. We're looking for investment dollars. We're in a seed round right now, so we've got some good options. Sorry about that, Pete. No. All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So definitely not a money transistor.
Yeah.
Yes. Jacob, you want to come up and plug in? And you're plugging in HTML, yeah?
Yeah, my name is Jake Castillo. I'm Director of Content Innovation at Dun & Bradstreet here in Austin. I guess let's start doing questions, show of hands. How many people have heard of Dun & Bradstreet and know what we do? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's useful hands. Okay, so for the people who don't know what we do or who we are, so Dun & Bradstreet is a very old company. We're just over 175 years old. We've employed several presidents like Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant is how old we are. And you know, a lot of that.
Not you personally.
That's right.
Good for his age.
Actually, and I do have a question. So is this presentation being recorded?
It's being streamed.
It's being streamed?
Possibly.
Possibly, okay. All right, well, I was hoping to, that it wasn't. Just for my own personal gratification. Okay, so another thing, someone brought up a question, and it turns out to be a very good question. Sorry, going back to Dun & Bradstreet, we do business identification and credit risk scoring on businesses. So all those really bad companies that gave away a bunch of personal identifiable information, we're the business company that does kind of that without giving away people's personal information. So so far we've actually been really good with our data security, and we haven't had any breaches. But from like the Equifax, TransUnion, getting credit scores on companies, that's kind of what we do. We ingest a lot of data, and we pay a lot of money for data every year. It's probably in the below $100 million range of the amount of money that we actually pay for data that we ingest. Data is very important to us, and data is what blockchain's all about, right? Okay, so MDM. Show of hands if you know what MDM stands for and means. Okay, very, very few. Okay, MDM stands for Master Data Management. And I will explain later in the presentation what Master Data Management actually means. So thinking of blockchain as a master data management problem. Okay, show of hands. How many of you know what blockchain is? Okay, I'm going to say that you're all wrong, that nobody actually knows what blockchain is. This is the dumbest argument that comes up every single blockchain conference is, does my company need to be on blockchain? Does this solution need to be on blockchain? And really it devolves into a semantic argument of what is blockchain. And I will tell you that blockchain has completely devolved into a non-technical definition. Right? So people love to argue this is what blockchain is. It's very, very specific. And people who are in the blockchain space, it's sort of like drones, right? If someone says drone, you're supposed to immediately think of quadcopters, even though drone does not mean quadcopter. If you hear drone strike, suddenly you're not thinking of quadcopters anymore, right? So blockchain has kind of done the same thing, where blockchain can mean a lot of different things that don't technically specifically mean blockchain. So when I say blockchain, what I'm talking about is just anything that utilizes cryptography to push transactions on a ledger. And it's preferable that that ledger is distributed, but honestly, it doesn't really matter for most people. Okay, so we're gonna move along. All right, so what's the current state of blockchain? There is a proliferation of protocols of blockchain. There's the Bitcoin protocol and its clones. There's Ethereum, Hyperledger, Ripple, Corda, Hashgraph, Factom, Symbiont, any number of additional protocols that I missed. I just came up with this list off the top of my head. I literally didn't look it up. What I did look up is that there are over 1,600 tokens. Over 1,600 tokens currently in the public space. So not only is there a proliferation of protocols, there's a proliferation of instantiations of those protocols, and that's just the public one. In addition to that, there are hundreds of private POC chains that companies have done. So what is basically still true about blockchains? Blockchains don't really trust each other, right? So if you have data that was put onto a blockchain or a particular instantiation of a blockchain, then that data is not trusted for a transaction in a different blockchain. So blockchains don't trust each other. You can't make one transaction using the data from another one. Private key management.
There are a couple out there like Aeon and even local WAMchain that have cross-chain.
So are those like add-ons to?
You have a car on a train that can go to any train track.
Okay.
It stays with it.
Okay.
There are a few now.
There are a few now.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's operated by that additional overlayer of blockchain, correct? It's basically translating from one.
Some of them are translating, some of them are actually the blockchain. Yes, so it's like an overlayer, so it's a pairing. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, okay. I'll grant that there are definitely.
There are a few that are actually their own blockchain too, but. Like Aeon is their own blockchain.
Okay, and you can do a Bitcoin transaction on Aeon?
Yeah. Can you do a Bitcoin transaction on Aeon? No.
Okay.
We'll go afterwards.
All right, yeah, we'll talk about, okay. The other thing, private key management is not something that lay people really can do. Private key management, for as long as I've been in cryptocurrency, which is a long time, is not really something that I am always super comfortable with. I worry all the time that my very expensive wallets are going to be lost or compromised in some way. So it's a stomach churning thing, and it's something that while there are a lot of solutions that are being built, things around Uport, where private key management turns into more of a distributed private key management, it's still a very, very difficult thing for the common person to get a hold of, wrap their heads around. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning of blockchain. So in the beginning there was Bitcoin, and Satoshi Nakamoto said, the Times, 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks, and the Genesis block was created for Bitcoin. And for a long time, everything about Bitcoin had to do with cryptocurrencies. You could fork the code, you can instantiate new Genesis blocks, but at the time, everything was going to be all right, because network effect would enforce who is going to win and who is going to lose, and by lose I mean asymptotically approach zero for their price, and all these things were supported by proof of work. So it was very simple because we're just talking about tokens. Let's see. So then the question is, what did businesses, because DNB is really just a business-oriented company, what did businesses think of blockchain at this time? Behold, the field in which I grow my forks, which I swear is the original word there. Lay thine eyes upon it, and thou shalt see that it is barren. Businesses did not care about cryptocurrencies. Even likely candidates, like insurance and remittances, they really didn't care either. It was a very small market, and they didn't really see themselves being pushed out of the way. All right, so a few more cycles go by, and new blockchain protocols and forks develop. And there were many reasons for these forks and these new protocols. One reason was to solve problems. So there's problems in scaling, there's problems in speed, privacy, keeping the network distributed, transaction obfuscation, and I think the most integral of all, the new features that were coming along that blockchain could do. Smart contracts, distributed internet, things like that. And then the last one that we really can't ignore is that there was a pretty good cash grab going on, right? People starting up Kitty Coin and Kitek Coin and whatever type of coin they wanted, just as a quick cash grab to keep things money or moving, because a quick buck spends just the same as a hard earned, doesn't it? Okay, so now that we have all these new uses for blockchains coming out, specifically around smart contracts, what's the current business barometer? Ooh, smart contracts are really interesting. So I think that these new features were really the Cambrian explosion for blockchains when it came to the business world. So what happens when businesses start getting involved in blockchain? So the first thing we see is that everybody starts making a POC. Okay, so what do these POCs look like? All of these POCs are private walled gardens. So they are new instantiations of a protocol. And each of these POCs seem to solve exactly one use case. Let me see if I have anything in my notes that I want to say about it. Okay, so yeah, I guess not only are these solutions isolated physically, but they don't really start solving big picture problems yet. So there was a promise that came along with blockchain, and that was everybody can coexist on the same platform, especially when it came to Ethereum's promise when Vitalik was talking about it early on in those early days. It's now a platform for you to do whatever business thing that you want and have a cryptocurrency that can settle any type of these smart contract transactions. But you start building private walled gardens, and suddenly you kind of throw that idea out the window. All right, so why does this happen? Why do businesses operate this way? So the first one is fear. And I don't want to be disparaging about fear, because fear also, in this case, could be caution. So it's actually pretty reasonable for businesses to approach this with caution. These are your crown jewels of your business, especially if you're an established business. You don't really want to put your crown jewels on this new network that you don't quite trust, this public network that everybody's sharing. You want to build up your core technologies, your core infrastructure on a private blockchain and see where you can go from there. The next reason that happens is greed. And for this picture, I'm specifically using Carter J. Burke from Aliens, because Carter J. Burke specifically came out and said, if we do this, if we didn't go out and try to bring back these aliens and keep it for ourselves, then nobody wins. There's no exclusive rights for anyone. And exclusive rights are exactly what companies are looking for. They're looking for that moat, and they're looking for their private walled garden. They want people to join their solution. They don't want to join somebody else's solution, because then they lose and somebody else wins, and they can't take that. So greed is another way, or another reason why private walled gardens. The last one is that coordination is really just difficult and expensive. The end result is that what we have is a more fractured and like more prolific blockchain ecosystem. And this is sort of the start of the problem for master data management. And honestly, if you wanted to get around having to implement a master data management solution, then really you have to fight against these basic human tenets of nature. All right, so what does a master data management problem look like? So this is an example from the fictitious Acme Corporation. So they have two different systems in-house. And I'm describing something that D&B currently does. So it's not some pie-in-the-sky idea. So they have a CRM tool that they have all of their customers in, that they're doing sales on. They also have a supply chain tool. And these tools use a different back end. And those back ends increment the database identifier by 1. So whoever puts theirs in at whatever time, that's the identifier that the database goes on, and that's the identifier that the tool uses. The other thing is that you have people entering this data, and people don't enter data in the same way. So if we look at these two examples, we have definitely different IDs. One's name is Gorman NMF, one's name is Gorman Manufacturing. I don't know, could be the same. Two different addresses, but again, this is different tools. So one of them might be a warehouse, and one of them might actually be a sales or headquarters, and they seem to be right next to each other. Definitely different contact names. So it's really, really difficult for these companies internally to determine whether or not these two companies are the same thing. And that's where Dun & Bradstreet comes in with a master data management solution. So one of the things that we have that we're branding on is something called Live Business Identity. So Dun & Bradstreet uses a DUNS number, and this is our own master data management solution in-house. So all of our tools in-house, all of our solutions reference the DUNS number for a company and how they're identified. So this provides identity resolution, it provides hierarchy and linkage. So just like, do both of these particular companies or subsidies, do they roll up to the same parent company? And it provides a bunch of different attributes in addition to that. so that we can start matching, saying like, okay, well, we have this particular bit of information. We can confidently match you with this particular DUNS number, which is this company. One of the things that we do with this is supply and comply solutions, which is really kind of a way of saying supplier onboarding. So you have someone who comes in, you want them to be part of your supply chain, then you identify them with Dun & Bradstreet. We provide you with the additional firmographic information about them. We provide you with monitoring and alerts. So these are tools that we already provide for companies for mastering their data internally. In addition to that, there is the master data management solution. Let me get to the right card. And this is basically the tool that we use for people to come in and use our data as reference data to give them a single view of who the companies are inside their internal organization. So one of the things that was expressed to me by the master data management team to make sure that you guys know is that we are not a master data management platform. We are not the tools that actually do the master data management internally. We are reference data. So we do provide the tools for match and for referencing the data, but we don't provide the solution that will go through and actually upgrade everybody's database and make sure that everybody has a unified view. That's still handled internally. We just sell ourselves as reference data. And I think that's actually kind of an important part for blockchain, because blockchain's not looking for a tool for doing this. They're looking for reference data so that they can handle this on their own. All right, so what does this master data management problem look like on blockchain? So currently, when you receive a transaction or when you're looking at someone on the blockchain, typically what you're going to see is a public key, right, an address. And sometimes if you're dealing on Hyperledger, maybe you have some additional information that's actually part of the X509 certificate. So there's different varying levels of what you're going to see, but in the end, everything can be boiled down to a public address. The real nice thing about these public addresses is that they are practically guaranteed to be unique, right? So they actually serve really well as identifiers for companies. So right now what we have is, again, Acme Corporation, and they've decided, hey, we do want to interface with blockchain. We want to do business on the blockchain. But because of the fractured environment, what blockchain are they going to be interfacing on? And what are they going to be doing business with? They will probably not just even have one supply chain blockchain. There will probably be multiples, because they will have customers that insist on using one blockchain and customers that insist on using a different blockchain. And then also because all of these solutions are appearing as single use case solutions, your supply chain blockchain is not going to be your trade finance blockchain. So you are almost necessarily going to have to identify businesses across chain. So what does Dun & Bradstreet intend to do about this as an MDM solution? So we want to archive public addresses for companies, what they want to use, and we want to put that in as their firmographic information under the DUNS number. I want to stress that this is not another protocol, it's not another platform. It's a service that we're going to provide, or that we do provide, to allow you to do searches on blockchain identifiers to give you a disambiguated company information. And then we also provide tools to make onboarding into other blockchains easier. So the really, really nice thing about blockchain is that everything is dealt with in cryptographic primitives, right? And cryptographic primitives are a really good way of proving truth. And so if you have an identifier that we have verified as true, then it really becomes a simple matter for us to be able to onboard you onto another supply chain. So one of the things that we seem to run into a lot of when we're talking to companies and they're doing these POCs is that they say, well, we don't need Dun & Bradstreet data. We already know everybody who's in our private walled garden. And we say, well, that's great because you have the 5 companies there, but what happens when you want to scale? What happens when you want to introduce someone who isn't there? Like, do you actually have those problems already? Yes, you do. It's when you're trying to add a new supplier. We receive information about how much it costs to onboard suppliers into a supply chain. It's in the thousands of dollars, $5,000 minimum, $25,000 for some of the more complicated supplier onboarding problems. So if we actually have a unified view of them and can cryptographically prove who these people are, then we can reduce the cost of onboarding into new systems. Okay, so identifying a business with their address. This is something kind of like what I already said, but it's a picture. So we match unambiguously a company based on their blockchain address. From that, we can tell what network you're on, because you should be using different private keys, right? You shouldn't be using the same private key for different networks, because that would be a bad idea. So hopefully that's unique, and we can not only tell who you are, but what network you're coming from. We can also tell whoever is asking the other blockchains that they're involved in, and what public keys that they are identified by in those different blockchains or different smart contract systems. And we can tack onto that DNB firmographic and risk data. So firmographic data doesn't change all that often. Risk data is incredibly dynamic. So we, in addition to all the data that we're pulling in about who a company is, we also pull in trade information. So we have a lot of information from people who are not paying their bills on time, or are late on certain things, or some companies actually want to know who's paying early, because we don't want to set up a contract with them if we're not going to be able to get the interest out of them. Like, we don't want to waste the time on that. So that type of information we'll be able to pull in, and then also provide, hopefully, on the blockchain. So if you have a blockchain and you want DNB data on it, we are very willing to work with anyone, and we attempt to be as agnostic as possible when it comes to the technology. All right, so how does DNB bring this data to the blockchain? So I'm assuming everybody pretty much knows what an oracle is. It's outside information brought onto a blockchain. So we would like to operate as a node on every blockchain that we possibly can, and provide business information for anyone who's requesting it at a transactional level. So if you have a smart contract, we would really like for DNB to be a part of the smart contract process flow that says, okay, you want this to move forward in the smart contract process, then DNB has to say that you have a PAYDEX score of at least 70, or some other credit risk information type thing. One of the things that this can really help with business is automating some of these transactions that they have a human check, but honestly they don't need to. And really you're just sort of wasting someone's time to just check a box again and again to say, yes, this can go through, yes, this has approval. So with that kind of timely information, you can mitigate risk while still keeping transactions automated. All right, so as I said, we're here to mitigate risk. One of the things that we try to promote is when it comes to blockchain, jump in, we got your back. So hopefully using our best-in-class data, we can provide trust across blockchain instances. One of the things that I really hope that this helps with is that we provide a way for newcomers to come in and compete against incumbents. Because a lot of times the only reason that an incumbent is there is because they've spent a lot of money to build up a big source of information that they're now going to try to hide from everyone. So if DNB has identifying information on everyone, hopefully this really encourages new solutions to come in and we don't have stagnation in innovation. And also, blockchain can be a very scary place for different businesses. DNB is also, we're one of them. We're 175 plus years old. A lot of ways we're very conservative, and it's very difficult for us to jump on board new technologies. But we're hoping that we can actually accelerate adoption into blockchain. All right, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Yes?
So, is DMB going to be on a actually decentralized blockchain itself, storing the data? Because otherwise you have access to all these blockchains, you're actually gathering all that data onto a set of centralized servers.
Yeah.
Which I know some of the community would be like, well, that's kind of reversing the whole point of a decentralized ecosystem. So how you answer that question when you're going into businesses to say we don't want to have our data in a small place where it can be hacked or compromised versus decentralized?
It's about scalability and speed, and it's also about not necessarily sharing with us things that you don't want to be public. So one of the biggest concerns that most businesses have is being discovered and making it easy to do business with them. Businesses really like that. So we are not putting personally identifiable information on there.
Okay.
We don't deal in PII at all. And that kind of keeps us out of trouble in a lot of ways. But yeah, so we are hoping that not only do we have this information, but I don't even intend for Dun & Bradstreet to charge for the kind of
I mean,
information.
what would a bad actor do? They actually got access to it. So would you have a Target or I mean, you can go on and on, right? Some of these larger databases of data that gets compromised.
I mean, if you're on a public chain, then there's nothing the only thing we're doing is collating data.
Right.
That data is available. On some of these private chains, there may be instances of a company saying, well, we don't want it known that we deal on this particular blockchain.
Right.
So we would probably observe their wishes, but at the same time, I mean, centralized and encrypted is slightly more secure than decentralized and encrypted. It's not robust. It's not as robust. It's faster and scalable. But yeah, I guess if it's just sort of decentralized and encrypted, then you have multiple attack vectors on it. But it's still encrypted.
But it won't be immutable. So I mean, it'll be immutable though, in that sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Transparency, I agree. You do see the data potentially.
Yeah.
Or the hashes, but the immutability part would be a challenge on a small set, right?
Yeah. And a lot of it is just sort of we will react to what our customers want. We're not going to throw things into an immutable database if it's not going to give a benefit to our customers.
Right. Makes sense.
Yes.
If I understood correct, I mean, the Dun & Bradstreet data is in the central database or whatever, right? It's not going to be on the blockchain, right? So you're just sort of a lookup, a directory for any business on any blockchain that you can offer, like a CA, validate that business is who they say they are across. Is that fair for what you're describing today?
That is fair, yes. And one of the, I guess, a couple of
because you're not doing an internal ledger, an event about a company that will be on public that everybody can scrutinize.
Correct.
So that's your internal IP. That's in your
we're not attempting to start a blockchain platform. We're not attempting to. We only want to participate in blockchains in the form of being an oracle.
Right.
If there were other trusted people, institutions around, you wouldn't have to worry about being the central source. I've got getting back to how I look at blockchain, it's about trust. Okay, and that goes into things about a central source. You need that. Sit back. Firebomb or whatever. I want one other. Well, I want whatever 19 of these other organizations that I can trust. Now, whether it be a bank, I don't know how many people get upset. But I digest about what you're really doing.
I mean, what we're really doing is
Your
attempting to
value.
make money for Dun and Bradstreet, I guess. That's our main priority, but.
No, you can put the pot, but you just put the pot. Let's say it was, who do you trust, IBM? What they tend to be doing, it seems to be for their supply chain, is they've started with their own people they know, Walmart and Maersk, but I would expect them to get up to some number of.
What is the question?
My question is, how do you build trust in that they are keeping, they are adjudicating?
How do you build trust in our particular, in our data?
That's separate, that's what I was saying. Separate.
Yeah.
You're not trying to do a Dun & Bradstreet on the public, right? It's an Oracle, like you said.
Yeah, it seems like the last thing the blockchain community is looking for, much to what Joshua said, is yet another token and yet another blockchain service. So we are attempting to provide services for blockchain, not necessarily trying to set the blockchain platform. Right. Yes.
Do you have like a developer sandbox or anything, toolkit that developers can try?
Not
SDK?
Not necessarily. So right now we are working with a couple of partners in the POC space, and basically just sort of we're working one-on-one with a couple of companies before we open it up.
You have a partner program?
You can talk to me.
Okay, sounds
and
good.
and I could definitely I could set that up. I'm the lead developer for it, so.
That's awesome.
If I say yes, let's go for it, then that's what I'll be doing.
That sounds like I'm talking to the right person.
Just for clarification, do you cryptographically kind of have a way to ensure that that company is who they say they are on that blockchain in addition to, or are they just identifying by you, or are you a CA? Can you sign so that they are who they say they are,
right,
as vouched by?
Yeah, I mean there are definitely different technologies that we will be utilizing, and even with supply chain, the reason why it is so expensive is a lot of times the only verification that's acceptable is boots on the ground. So you can say who you are all you want, and that you have a factory in Guatemala, and that it's running, and you employ 50 people, but until somebody sees it and takes pictures of it, no one's going to believe
Right, so that's what I'm saying.
So,
you're acting in that role.
Yes.
That's because that's where the value would come.
Right. So
as a CA, like in today's world, that's
right.
what CA, that's for identity, right, or something to say, hey.
But if it's just a matter of like you've been doing business for a while, you have a domain, we can send you some data, you can put it up on your domain, and we can, verify. There's different ways that CAs do verify.
But I'm just saying the value there is if I'm a company working with that supplier, everyone's going to have to do the same exact rigorous validation. Do you have a factory? You have 50 people, so everyone's going to be spending money doing that. So you do it once, and then you sell a small fee to all the 50 people at once. I mean, is that kind of?
Yeah. So that is yes. So right, because now that you do have a cryptographic proof of identity,
right?
Then yeah. So in a way that might be something that is blockchainable.
They're already doing that right now. So, yeah, they're already doing cryptographic identity on the blockchain to assume a mutable, so that you are who you are, and they can prove that.
Yeah, but the problem is you are what you are until somebody there's that trust. Where there's trust. Right? At some point, the concept of the CA doesn't that have to be there? And I'm not a blockchain expert, so I'm just asking you from the presentation. But is that the value that Duns is giving you, right?
That yes.
Right. Because if I trust Duns.
And there are different levels of validation that do occur from just a phone call to a site visit.
You said you spent a lot of money for data.
Yes, I don't personally.
Well, Dun & Bradstreet, and notoriously D&B, from my history, is not up to like 24-hour updates as far as data, company information, so forth. Are you willing to bridge other blockchains and pay for that updated data to businesses outside of your domain?
Can you rephrase the question?
In other words, I'm a company owner.
Yeah.
Say I have a company ID, and I go to my companyid.com blockchain, and I manage my identity data, and then I bridge it to your data. will you pay me for that data?
There are different solutions that we are looking into to probably tokenize, but maybe not pay. It's really hard to pay people in ones and twos unless you're.
No, this is micro.
Yeah.
But
So
let's just say if an address of a company changed, right? Obviously, your system has a delayed process or supplier changes. Those dynamic changes are not immediate.
Right.
And so that benefit would enhance your system.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if that network of these bridged blockchains helped you, would you pay for that service?
Yes. But how that would be paid, I'm not.
Oh, it's automatic.
But
The business themselves would actually gain, because they actually would create a revenue stream backwards for their data.
absolutely. And one of the things that we are attempting to do in the innovation department is to make that data supply chain a little bit more responsive, because it does go through some pretty.
Because that's what we feel the
systems.
blockchains, that's what they're there for, is an immediate, immutable data identity structure.
That's removing also the middlemen. Sometimes a lot of that data is
Right.
coming from trusted sources that you're gathering, right? But you have to pay a premium for it.
Right.
Whether it's government or some other service
And
provider.
you'd be surprised at how wrong some of those trusted sources can be sometimes.
Well, but I'm
the
just,
point.
Yeah.
technically, right?
There's
So-
a company involved with different identity structures all over the world. And they actually would benefit by creating their own platform for their own identity structure and bridge it to yours.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, like I said, the interoperability solution is being solved by some of these blockchains like Aon, which is what they do. Basically what you're describing is a non-blockchain version in a lot of ways of what Aon is doing to bridge between different chains and to associate that this company here on this chain, same company on this chain, same company on this chain, no matter what chain it's on, and that is the same person, the same company, whatever metadata you're tracking. So I'm just curious how you look at how you're dealing with those competitors, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, not only is there a lot of competitive stuff in the blockchain space, but we also realize that we may be accelerating the competition, because right now we're sitting on a moat, and that moat is a large amount of data that we've collected and the relationships of the data collection that we maintain. One of the things is, I guess one of the arguments that we have for moving into this and helping out in the blockchain space is that like we don't want to be the person that just sits there while the rats eat the legs out of our stool. You know, if it's going to happen, then let's roll up our sleeves and dig into it and try to maintain some piece of our ownership and brand and identity, and hopefully provide a valuable service along with it.
I just think y'all actually might acquire one of these chains that are doing that.
Sure.
To move to that, so that you're actually on the newest, greatest technology is doing that, I guess. And then,
Sorry, I feel like I keep ignoring you, so
Oh, it's okay. So I guess, I saw Uport on your slide there.
Yes.
So there are a whole bunch of Uports out there, right? So if you're gonna create your sovereign identity, either as an individual or a corporation, organization, right, you can do that on those platforms, right? Those are decentralized, et cetera. So why would I'm sure there's a good reason, but why would I engage Dun & Bradstreet when I've already created my cross-chain sovereign identity that's decentralized?
So for the most part, those sovereign identities, I guess.
Maybe not today, just so you know. Maybe in a year while it gets fleshed out.
Yeah.
But as that industry moves along.
Right, in the future, so currently, our bread and butter is risk data. And risk data gets pulled in by us consuming trade tapes, and they literally are tapes. But consuming this data from all these different sources, and basically compiling and scoring, like creating a score, a derivative score to say, here, this is a 75, and that means something. In the future, like right now, that's basically what blockchain is missing, is historical data. In the future, historical data transactions will build on all these blockchains, So, so one, that historical data will come about, and people will learn to utilize that in order to develop their own risk scores. And two, Dun & Bradstreet should do that as well. Like, we should not let other people do that while we're not doing that. And especially if we can position ourselves as someone who's providing that data now and giving that service and value now, then part of that contract needs to be, in order for us to provide these good scores to you in the future, we need to be able to consume the exhaust of these trades. We need to know what's going on. So like one of the things that I have told the executive team when I was doing a presentation is that a lot of these private chains are invite only, and you don't get an invite unless you're providing value. So we are going to provide value in order to get an invite into these chains in order to remain relevant in the future.
So perhaps you're not doing it for the identity part, because in your answer you didn't talk about the sovereign identity. You're doing it more for the risk profile, intelligence part, that perhaps is relevant to the blockchains, but not to say that company is that company, because that's probably going to be solved by other folks.
Yeah, if we can help reduce costs in doing things like that, then that's kind of it's our value prop right now. Our value proposition is, yeah, we can do business identification, we can do cross-chain references, and also in a way that Walmart is going to understand. So I mean, to try to explain to their executives that Aon can do this, they're going to say like, well, can we just have a web service?
If you have to change your piping, if you change your piping out, you'll be great. You'll stay the leader, because Aon doesn't know how to do your part of the business part, right? And they don't have the relationships.
And you have the history.
Yeah.
But I would say if you were able to onboard, millions and millions of businesses into this new dynamic of decentralized sovereign identity, I think that would be super powerful, because that's what blockchain is missing.
Yeah.
The cross.
There are a lot of companies trying to solve that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but if you have the you have basically the source data in a way, not on the risk side, but just the fundamental. This is who you are, right?
Cross identity.
Yeah,
but you're not going to do that unless.
It's the fire that I keep trying to light under people. Is this is ours to lose? This is ours to
exactly.
Technically, it's still ours to lose.
You would probably have to do it for free.
But is that more means to the end? Because you're going to provide that probably, I don't know, for free, but you're trying to get in there where there's somewhat of an oracle for every private blockchain out there, right? Because you want to be present, right?
Yes.
But ultimately, if you get inserted into how contracts as a lookup, then now you're also getting data directly.
Yes.
At the time that's happening, not paying for some Aon or some blockchain to then sell you data, say, hey, here's all the blockchain transactions that happen. Is that kind of a dual strategy?
Yeah, so I mean,
add value, but then
if it reduces costs in the future, then I'll make sure to tell everybody about how smart I was.
But is that kind of the approach a little bit?
That is, yes. Makes sense. Go ahead.
It seems like you're focused on blockchain for the acquisition and storage of data. Do you distinguish between blockchains and distributed ledgers, where distributed ledgers are more focused on business process management functions? Are you guys involved in that space at all?
Anything that starts with cryptographic primitives we're interested in. And so distributed ledgers, not blockchain, yes, we're absolutely interested in.
Because I mean, we utilize you guys to tell us if a company is good. Is this company good? We go to Dun & Bradstreet and go, what's their risk score? What's their evaluation? Dun & Bradstreet can tell us that. So in that process, I would think that distributed ledgers would have some sort of utility in that process of just determining whether or not the valuation that you're giving back to us is a good valuation.
There are going to be new classes of risk that the hyperledgers, lawyers or whoever, whole team, armies of lawyers for keep maintaining the credibility, costs, or so I think if you're obviating another part of the society, they're going to have to go back and figure out what lawyers do to settle a contract, a violation, or get a penalty for a violation of the contract.
Did that answer your question?
That's what I thought.
No, you answer. You answer my question.
Okay. Yes.
Last one.
Last one.
Okay. I think you you had a point about getting the privacy, basically the privacy right of your client to protect it, the data that can't be given out or whatever. That's a similar situation to the HIPAA in healthcare. Have you thought about whether you could translate what you're doing? Because they haven't even figured out how. I remember going to one large hospital, well-known hospital, and they said how many Sam Johnsons they got in terms of finding out the door. And I'm sorry, that's your value, but the HIPAA, the privacy, that you need a consent language. That's where I was going.
So
you have to develop a consent language, which I don't think you have to put into the research.
I mean, HIPAA's way more regulated than our industry, and
you're getting close.
I guess if there's two facets to this question, one, like we do have some people in the context of business information, but that's basically this person works here, has this email address in the context of this business. We don't store private information, and also it's just not in our business model paradigm to deal with
You have the
HIPAA or
time in
anything.
there from when that person engaged in. You have that time factor, that's your value.
The person engaged in what?
Yes, in the business or
Yes.
in that number. And that time factor will be important. Because
For
time builds trust
traceability?
too.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can follow his call for a new content that needs to be built.
You're handling the personal identification assurance that's that person and no one else is, which is a big problem. I guess where I did a jump, which is a big problem in terms of providing a consent language. Right now, the consent language in health care is a yellow canary sheet, or the fact that we have to go to another doc and get the same information over there. They're trying to avoid that because they want all of our data together to make the right diagnostics for all our history and all that. And that's requiring what's called a consent language.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's not really my field as far as the consent and the legal behind that. I know that we tend to avoid things that require consent, and also most of the time when people want a person in the context of business, it's for a contact, so they're not terribly interested in where they used to be. Other than if they're trying to look it up, like, oh, there's this guy, Mike Shanahan, and he used to work here, and like where is he now? And so it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's right, right. So there are other services that provide that probably better than us.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone for coming. We're going to mingle around here, chat, swap cards for a few minutes. Some of us may be found downstairs in the bar team, but thank you all for coming. The next collective meetup is next month. It's August 20. It's always the third Monday of every month, and Joshua will be running it, and we'll get information up on meetup.com in the next couple of days, and you'll get emailed all about it. So thanks for coming, and see you around.
I know another CEO
like
know you
really their team or to use
So,
yeah, but yeah, right now, a lot of my
That's missing in
I know that the Saharans just made it really crazy. It's so loud. It looks like it's like overcast.
State of Texas tried to do that. They found out. Don't worry about it.
So I try to see.
we probably have to work pretty closely
Regardless ownership, but those guys who own a Medicare system, the guys that own the Medicare system, the guys that own Medicare, insurance companies look for them to solve the problem. But the EHRs will solve the problem. It's certainly important to stay outside of it. Yeah, it is a smart, the way that it's smart, that I believe the right stuff is you're going to see diversity you saw and all that, you're going to see.
You're coming on Thursday, right? Okay, so and Keith should be there. Keith said he was coming. Was that people on I know it's bad.
That's sad.
Have you done blockchain?
No fun. I need to, my big problem is parking.
No.
We have anyone interested in
See you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah.
I always feel like reward your company for the startup because
Let me show to you what Thomas and Thomas to help us aware that
Look at some companies.
if this was just our platform targeting everyone, so like the only argument, so it needs to be so a platform that's set up to be shared and not owned.
Yeah, I know.
So that's the only way that this is
GDPR, so that's why you're getting these notices from your users.
That's actually using my key on my car, across the street, like all hours
there's the key inside of this one.
You gotta put to that.
This weekend we can meet
Allow like
with the
And there's going to be
capital.
fines.
We can put some money. Thomas originally, small chance.
Good job.
Management professionals that are And all accreditations around there.
They don't, like you said, Walmart might have not everybody knows what you're doing.
It's hard to do.
Licensing.
Yeah.
Or giving you that and they're also able to get share revenue from providers for marketing. That's hoping to create that market. Isn't doing it, but they could just to show essentially they're
And that's
the reason why you do it is
yeah, we're not sure how,
because
otherwise you're on your companies, there are still on information.
The other thing that
And so, like, I guess the question is,
And I have to go with
then you get basically 6 months.
They still eat their own dogs.
we can monitor.
all I wanted to do is
help stabilize it. So it's not a good way. One of the problems with now is that everyone's ability to migrate.
Right.
That's the challenge.
You should do it pretty This is cool. This is
Honestly, like the firmographic information, what we call it, like addressing data, like
we would
that stuff
definitely
is
looking at doing
really
more
small.
for sure.
It is one of the ones that triggers the most complaints, because we are,
I mean, they'll say,
outdated. It's like the worst trenches of what we like our crown is really
Or you do use something and
because it's dynamic.
Yeah, if there is someone, yes, I sent today, please come back because I can't work with of my brain. I need the mother.
This process, for example, I'll give you an example. California. So, country Singapore,